Hunting. It's an avid hobby of mine, and it runs in the family. My favourite animals to catch are deer and boars, as they are quite a challenge to catch, and I love a challenge. As well as general hunting, camping in the woods is therapeutic for me, as you're in nature's natural habitat, which can be greatly enjoyed when you're by yourself. Accompanying this are the type of people you meet whilst hiking. I've met people who shared their food and campfire with me, and some even hiked with me to the gorgeous wilderness we call the woods. But most of the time, it's your animal friends who accompany you whilst you're walking and camping. I wish this story was about all of the above, but things took a plummet for the worst. And this is my story. I had recently completed an assignment, which I would like to describe as long-winded and quite boring, even though it was my favourite topic, human biology. Due to this, I decided to take a 5-day hike across a vast stretch of woods. Brilliant for hunting, apparently. As a hunting enthusiast, I decided to hunt for some deer and possibly some boars if I came across any. So I prepped up my water filter, packed my tranquilizer and hunting equipment, as well as my pop-up tent and some snacks high in energy. And then I took the 3.5-hour drive to my destination. I was stoked and excited, as I loved camping and hunting, as I could unwind around nature and overall enjoy the set atmosphere of the woods provided. After seemed like days behind the wheel, I arrived at what looked like an abandoned parking lot at about 3:30 p.m. All of the bays were empty, and the ranger's office looked like it hadn't been occupied for years. But I brushed it off, parked up, and began my hike. The place gave me a very uneasy vibe, as if the woods beyond the ranger's office was sinister, in a way. I can't really describe what gave me the uneasiness, but I honestly chalked it up to the place looking abandoned and creepy. Either way, I headed out onto the path and began scouting the area for animals. I've got to be honest, this set of woods was exquisite. The sun was shining through the trees, and the animals were up and active. I came across a few deer, but no boars unfortunately. Fast forward to about 8:30 p.m. It was a little bit uneventful, to be honest, and it was getting pretty dark and gloomy now, as it's mid-November. Now, I need to add, I'm quite a paranoid guy, as I was burgled when I was only 15. It was all okay in the end, but the paranoia of something or someone lurking in the shadows stays with me in the back of my mind when I'm out all alone at night. Anyway, excuse the babbling. I then whipped up a fire, cooked up some marshmallows, and warmed up some beans, and then I ate away, minding my own business. After this, I decided to go for a late night hunt, as I did a 2-week course on how to hunt prey in the woods when it's dark, and I think it really paid off. 15 minutes later, I put the fire out and I was prepared to go on my late night hunt. But then my blood ran as cold as ice, and my hands started to shake when I saw a silhouette of a person about 100 meters away from me. It was unexpected, so I internally freaked the fuck out. As well as this, I noticed a small pocket knife in their left hand, and it looked like they were crouching and stalking something as they had their knife at the ready. I believe it was a man, about 6 foot tall, and his back was facing me, so I believe he didn't notice I was there. I took this as a godsend. However, it could just be another hunter, like myself. After shitting bricks whilst watching this man for 5 minutes, he disappeared into the inky night, and I got over it pretty quickly, as I thought he was a fellow hunter, like myself. I honestly wished that that was the case. Fast forward 1 hour, and it's around 9:45 p.m, and I'm feeling confident enough to go back out into the black wilderness and catch a deer or two, or maybe even a boar. I pinpointed where my tent was on the map, and went on my way with my hunting equipment. 10 minutes later, I'm practically in no man's land, as everything around me was pitch black, but I knew what I was doing. I was stalking a deer, which hadn't noticed me, and it was about 50 meters in front of me, plodding around the eerie woods. I grabbed my tranquilizer, and placed the deer in my sights. That was when I heard the twig snap. My eyes darted, my legs went into jelly mode, and I jerked my neck to the source of the noise. What the fuck? A fucking silhouette had appeared out of the trees to my left, about 50 yards away, and it was just watching me. Not the deer, but me. The deer was long gone now, so it was just me and an unwanted guest. His size concluded to me that he was the same guy as before, 6 foot, roughly 200 pounds. He stared at me, and I stared back, my body still a stone, but my sudden outburst of adrenaline was making me shake. I couldn't see his face as it was too dark. Fuck. He was a late-night human butcherer. Am I not going to see daylight again? I just about choked out. Who's there? I tried to say this in the calmest voice I could do, but fear was evident when I asked the question. The man raised his hand with the pocket knife, and pointed his index finger towards me. That was it. I bloody bolted it north, whilst mildly tripping up and hitting my head off the tree branches. Twigs snapped rapidly behind me as this son of a bitch was chasing me. I looked back once and saw his vacant right hand brushing tree branches to the side of him. His knife gripped tightly in his left hand. I then realized that during it all, I dropped my tranquilizer. Fuck that shit, I could buy another one. I know I should have shot the guy, but it's amazing what one can forget when in a horrific situation. Even if it is a gun, I wasn't going back for it. A ton of thoughts were going through my mind whilst I was fleeing. Why me? What does he want? Money? Food? The hell could it be? That was when I honestly thought I'd pissed myself, as he then said in a rapid tone, "Isn't this fun?" He then had the goddamn audacity to start laughing in a patronizing way, and I couldn't take it anymore. I sped up, and I'll tell you now, it's amazing what the human body can do when adrenaline and natural instinct takes over. I had never ran so fast in my life. I made a hard right, dived into some bushes nearby quietly, and eventually lost the guy. I heard his footsteps go the opposite way, and it turns out that I went in a huge circle, as I could see my tent, only 50 meters from me now. I was absolutely shaking, and tears were starting to form, but I had to stay strong. I just had to. What would my father do in this situation? I tuned my ears to the inky darkness, and heard nothing. And I saw nothing. I was not going to turn my phone torch on, as I'd be an open target. I checked my watch, and it was now 10:30 p.m. I've been in the tent for 10 minutes now. I sat still in my tent, listening to every small noise I could hear in the woods. Snap. I held in my gasp, as I heard the twig snap behind the tent, and with that, accompanied a low and sinister voice. "You think you could run from me? I win." With that, my tent was being sliced open, and the fucker popped his head in. He was licking his lips, and his wide eyes locked with my eyes. "You lose," he screams as he pulls the knife out. Fighting, not my strong point, but the gym made me a pretty strong guy. So as he tried to stab me, I grabbed both his arms and fended him off from plunging a blade into my torso. I tried to disarm the guy, and all he was doing during the process was laughing. I thought he was trying to intimidate me. However, I was ready to kill. Not a deer, not a boar, but a human. I restrained his left wrist, but his knife was inches away from going into my foot, so I stepped on his right hand and pulled back on his left wrist, then snap. His left wrist snapped and he let out a blood-curdling scream. I had the upper hand and took the advantage of this. I got the knife from his distorted, shattered hand and gave him a taste of his own medicine. I sunk the knife into his right hand, and he screamed. I lay a few punches, and I think I popped his nose, but I had no regrets. I grabbed my arm in pain, as he made me bend in an awkward position when he was on top of me, when he ripped the tent open. But honestly, I couldn't care about my injuries. He tried to kick me, but I punched him in the face until he was unconscious. I checked my phone, and I had no phone service. Fuck, I panted. I picked up this guy into a fireman's lift, and I remembered my way to the ranger's office as it was exactly west from my tent. An hour of struggling with the killer on my shoulders out cold, I found the ranger station, and to my surprise, a young man around 20 was there. I collapsed to my knees as I explained the situation. As it turns out, this guy slashed my left bicep, but the adrenaline numbed out the pain. So when it wore off, I was suddenly in pain and noticed a laceration. The ranger called for backup, which eventually arrived. I don't know how long it took. Fuck, my belongings. I was not going to go back out there to retrieve them. The ranger offered to drive me to the nearest hospital in my car, and I did. The Night Stalker was taken away, but was semi-conscious. The next day, I woke up in a hospital bed to see an officer. And what he said next was burnt into my memory, never to be erased. When I first saw the killer, his back was towards me, knife in his left hand, and he was crouching as I mentioned earlier. It turns out he was stalking another hiker, who he brutally murdered and mutilated at the scene. They found chloroform at the scene, hence me not hearing any screams or cries for help. I vowed from then onwards to never go hunting by myself. The next time I was hunting, it was half a year after this incident, with 4 other mates. And although the woods have a beautiful atmosphere and vibe, never judge a book by its covers, as the tables can turn within a blink of an eye. For all of you going camping and or hunting, stay safe, and remember, don't think that these things can't happen to you.